nuclear industry and the issues with regard to the safety and some of the profiteering that goes on. So give a welcome to Ace.
Wow, it's wonderful to see you here. This is the biggest crowd I've ever seen against nukes. Prior to, or since, 1979, 1980, when we used to protest 3 Mile Island and all of that. And what's happened is we've all gotten pretty stupid, and we've forgotten the lessons. Back in the 60s, they did know we had to get rid of these plants. So rather than try to get everyone brought up to date, I'm going to try and just talk about what's actually happening there. And none of this may be right, because it's all based on hearsay and whistleblowers and ex-workers and articles and speculation. But what we think is happening there is that in one of the units, Unit 2, they had degradation in the steam tubes. The generators, there's 2 generators in each reactor. Now these are different from Fukushima, where there are no steam generators. Because Fukushima are boiling water reactors, so they boil the water and steam comes out. In our reactors, they're pressurized water reactors. So they heat the water up, but under pressure so that it will not boil. And then they run the very hot water through tubes, very thin tubes, the thickness of a credit card. And there's 10,000 of each of these tubes in each of 2 steam generators. So that's the difference between our reactor and Fukushima. Ours is under a lot of pressure. It's called a pressurized water reactor, and those are called boiling water reactors. So really, have you ever heard anyone trying to tell you in the last year that these are safer and less likely to blow up? They're not. They're at least as likely. And they're not any safer. And what happened is, in Unit 2, they put in new steam generators because the old ones had worn out prematurely. And they discovered it just a little over a year that those were wearing out where they were held to the, the brackets that were holding them. They'd shake. And they had 30% wear on 2 of them, and 20% wear on, I think, about 60, 70 of them. And at least 10% wear on 800. I remember there's about 10,000 of these tubes, so that's almost 10% of them have worn out or wearing significantly, and 5% on countless.
Peace, but I can tell you, peace is not the disruption of lives. And if something happens here, even a minor incident, not nearly as bad as Fukushima, we're talking about the disruption of lives. That is the opposite of peace. Wait for the train. That's kind of a boring ride, so they're getting a thrill. So it's important for us to remember that peace is preventing this reactor from running. It's important for us to make sure it doesn't start. Over here, we have maybe the 1 in 200 of the top toxic waste sites in the country. We have 30 to 40,000 tons of spent fuel. If something happens and there's a disruption to the cooling of that spent fuel, it's all over. It's guaranteed all over for within 10 miles, and within 50 miles, we're talking about the disruption of more than 8 million people's lives. That is not peace. The other thing I'd like to make very clear is that this, as we all know, is a profit-making endeavor. These people, every day that this plant runs, they produce toxic waste that can be toxic for tens of thousands of years. They are willing to do that to make a few bucks. What does that say about Sempra Energy?